Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning.
Hey.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's Monday. I'm still buttoning my shirt over here. I'm still.
You don't need to.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that waist up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's really all that you have to worry about. As far as you know.
You don't want to imagine. That's tough for a Monday.
Yeah. Great weekend. And it's been rainy and cold, but it just allowed for a lot of time to catch up.
Yeah,
and do some planning things.
Yard things done. Of course, we had most of the last week in Vegas. My speakers seem really hot. If we can adjust that helps. Thank you. Otherwise, I would say the trip to Vegas last week was very productive. Had some really great meetings at the end of the week with some current partners, potential partners. Our founding sponsors were represented there, so it's just a great opportunity for us to do some planning about what's next for our company and some of those things, and really, by all accounts was very successful, and, look for us to make announcements soon about next steps. And
we're looking forward to that.
What's next with our work?
Announcements?
Well, we haven't decided our Wednesday topic that I'm aware of. We don't have guests lined up. We do have guests, I believe, for Friday. That will be Jimmy Rambo and Eric Batchelor will be here to talk about
selling
notes,
paper.
or for in their case, buying notes. So they're going to talk to us about what it looks like to buy notes, and so dealers can kind of understand the elements involved with going that direction. So that's Friday. Also, tomorrow night, Tuesday, we have our last meeting of V8, and so it's too late really to get in that particular group.
Well, we do have room in the groups, so
each of the groups.
we met a couple of really great dealers while we were in Vegas, and so if you want in, let us know so that we can get you into a group, and because the spaces are filling up.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And of course, we'll add groups as need be, but just know that we do currently have seats available at each level, like regardless of your count level, we've got a spot. So just reach out if we want to step into something at the as we move into the month of May. In the meantime, those of you who are contemplating it, just make sure tomorrow at the close of April that you grab your inventory balance and your notes receivable balances and delinquency, and then we'll be able to take that information from the close of April and start you in the month of May. So.
Absolutely. We've got NADA's convention coming up in June. It's the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. Right. I got it right that time, right? Jim will be moderating a group. Do you remember what day?
No, I don't recall what.
What they've been doing is they have 4 different tracks. And so as you get into NIADA's website, they've got the agenda there, and kind of take a look at some of the things that they're going to have. It's going to be pretty well rounded out for education. So, you've got a buy here, pay here track, and then you have like a shop track and just an overall business track. And so there's a lot that you'll have opportunity to do. And they also have one of the best expos of in the industry. There will be a lot of booths. I think last year was the biggest they'd ever had, and I think they're anticipating this year will be even bigger, which is it was interesting when we were talking with one of the dealers over this last week that they said, we love the expo. Even though it's like, blood in the water, everyone's, but it's a really great way to keep up to date with what there is out there, what options there are out there, and how many options there are within certain things that you may need. And so, you have the opportunity to take a look at all of the different big people that are out there that are offering their services, which kind of segues into what we're talking about today.
It does. I think before we jump into the topic, I just want add to what you said about the exhibit hall. We talk a lot about meeting the people behind the product. And while you can't always meet the founders and presidents of these companies, most of them are there for the NIADA kind of conference. So it's a really good opportunity to meet all the people that you would be dealing with if you're contemplating a software change, or you're contemplating, you want to make a decision about GPS or whatever. All the people are there. You get a chance to meet all the providers and decide for yourself kind of what works for you. So that's a natural tie into what we're going to talk about.
But I want to say one other thing about the and it goes with this as well, is that we have the privilege of being a vendor in this space. Jim has been in the industry for 25 years, so he's met and knows a lot of the people behind the products, and for a lot of them since their inception. He's been familiar with the people and the products, and we can just say there are a lot of good options out there.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of really good, and there's multiple in each one of the things that we we'll talk about today, and all of that. And so, and people will say, well, what do you prefer? I mean, obviously there are some every once in a while that we run across that are, they're a little easier to work with or whatever, but there's just great options. And so, not everybody has the same bucket list that we do, because, we're vendors, and we're looking at it from a dealer perspective and our perspective about the things that we want to be able to see and do and all of that to be able to help people. But, so yeah. Okay. Segue
Topic.
Done. Topic.
Oh, yeah. So I'm making a note here that part of what inspired today's topic, we're talking about vendor agreements, and we're really talking about, and this is a conversation I remember being part of these conversations in a 20 group years ago. And the premise today is about looking at your vendor agreements. A couple of things that inspired this in the last week. One, we saw a dealer that we know posted in a private Facebook group about a really bad situation they found themselves in with a payment processor. They've been being charged a $5
for over
fee.
a year,
Yeah,
or
for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's many thousands of dollars in fees that they've been being charged that they're not supposed to be charged. And so this was an example of why it's important to go back in and, first of all, just assess your own contracts. Make sure you know. So I think first thing would be to make sure you know what the sunset is on your contract, or what the renewal date is. Some of them are going to automatically renew. So you want to make sure that you go in and just create a log, whether it's a shared spreadsheet or wherever you would do this for the sake of your business, whether this is a controller doing it or you as a dealer principal, you go in and find out, okay, on all my contracts, when are they set to expire? So you can watch that calendar.
We talk an awful lot about measuring, and, putting things on a calendar is a type of measuring. It's like, so that there are certain things that you're going to be taking a look at for, these are renewal dates, these are whatever. And it's an important piece to really keeping your business clean. And, when I think about the Facebook post about a payment processor and all of the fees, I can't help but think that that risk might have been mitigated a bit if their controllers understood the contract with the people that were billing beyond. If they'd fully understand and had the ability to audit, that might have not happened.
Yeah, and you don't know. You might have a new controller in there, who's been charged with this responsibility. So you don't know in that case what happened there. But that's a valid point. Like it's important for the controller. But I think, because we work with a lot of dealers who just aren't good at calendar management. They just don't really. They have our calendar.
So if you're not good at it, then find someone who is in your team that can help with that.
Spreadsheet that has dates, and you can sort it by date, so you know the next renewal thing that's coming up on which contract. And so it's like just to have a way to manage that, what's coming up for renewal, etc.
So that's like the first thing is like knowing when your contracts, what their sunsets are, making sure that you're tracking this, because I'll if you don't mind, I'll give an example. I worked with a company, and this is, not buy here, pay here, but it's what happens when you're working with companies outside of your own walls. That, sometimes you've got places that will go month to month. Sometimes it's, and one of the things we have found is a lot of these things are negotiable. But when I was working with an outfit. We did events for high achieving high school students, and I managed all of the inbound and outbound communication. And so there were like 1 million, no joke, 1 million emails that would go out every year. And so, it was a lot that we were handling, emails and phone and all of that. Well, one of the things that I had to do was to go through and audit, what are the softwares? And I'm going through, it's like, this software does not work for us. So I asked them to send me the contract, and the contract had us tied in for another 3 years. And so, it's really important that you have an idea about when things sunset. We were listening to, the Independent Dealers podcast, and they were saying that one of the experiences that I think it was Luke or something had is that if he didn't catch it, that it would automatically renew for 3 years, and he was stuck in another contract. So be really careful about when you look at those contracts. What happens when it's time to renew? Is it written in the contract that it's an automatic renewal? Is it written in the contract that it's a time for us to now sit down and reevaluate what it is that I would say most softwares, that's not going to be the case. Is it? It's going to be an automatic renewal. Sometimes it's a year to year after the initial contract, but sometimes it's not. And I don't know about you, but when you get stuck in a software that has a 3-year renewal, and it's pretty dang expensive to run double softwares because you don't like this one, but you're stuck in a contract, and so you like this one and it works better for you. I mean, that's a pretty big overhead question. And so, yeah.
Sorry, I'm over here preparing the. I'm TikToking as we do this. Kidding. I'm on my phone. I'm on my phone sharing a link because you said you mentioned that podcast. So I'm going to share it at least in the Success group for now.
Oh yeah,
I've got the link already teed
good.
up. So I'm sharing the link in Success because the other thing that inspired this conversation, this particular topic for us, is I listened to that podcast from, I think it was from 2023. It was from many months ago.
What did they call it? It was
called it the Battle of the Payment Processors. So that was Luke and Jeff on the Independent Dealer podcast. So again, I'm sharing the link to that episode with them.
Yeah,
and that one was on a particular vendor, right? A particular segment.
A segment of vendors. So it was payment processors is what they were talking about. So they
compared 3 payment processors. And I think a lot of what they talked about there relates to what we're covering here. And there are a couple of elements I hope that we're including here, maybe that they didn't necessarily go into on that particular podcast. But I think as a former 20 group member and having worked with dealers in this kind of capacity for many years, one of the things that I like to see dealers do is incorporate at least an annual process of assessing their vendors. So let me be super clear about this. When I say assessing the vendors, I'm talking about a kind of a team approach. This might be driven by the office manager or controller, general manager,
department managers.
It's really better that it's not the dealer, in my opinion. Like if I could send the letters out from somebody who's not the dealer, it would be preferred, because what you really want to do is, regardless of the relationship of the dealer and the vendor, you're really this controller. If I'm the controller, I'm assessing these relationships based first on financial. I'm looking at the financial elements of the contract. So that's going, what are they being charged for this? What are we being charged for that? So I'm looking first at the financial. And let me say, before I go any further, that personally, I'm a value buyer. So it's not just going to be about the numbers.
It's not going to be the cheapest.
It's not going to be just necessarily based on dollars that I'm going to make a judgment, but I need to first know where I'm at with dollars. Okay. So let's walk through this a little more carefully. Let's think. If I'm the controller, you're the dealer, and now I'm sending this out annually. Let's say I send these out in June.
Send an email. Well, you're saying you're sending an email out to all the vendors.
We could go out by paper mail. It's like, I'm just, however they communicate, however we typically correspond with them. And maybe it goes with my when I remit my payment, if I'm remitting a paper check, it goes out in the month of June. It says in the third quarter, we are going to be, as an example, in the third quarter, we are going to be assessing all of our vendor agreements. So we would ask you to please have a look and let us know if there's anything that, bears adjustment in our rates or services. Like so it's basically just putting everybody on notice. My best example, we don't typically name names here, but if you pick some big names from auto parts like O'Reilly's and AutoZone, I have an account with both. So I'm mailing a letter to each of them saying we're assessing all vendor agreements. And so we want to first verify, and as a matter of audit, we show that our agreement ends such and such date, which may be with AutoZone or O'Reilly's.
So this assessing the agreements doesn't need to happen on the sunset. You're just saying, pick a time. Is this something you would do annually?
At least annually.
Yeah.
It may not make sense to do it twice a year, but certainly annually. Because think about what this looks like. If I'm AutoZone and I receive this letter and I know that, and ideally I'm going to compare that, there's no harm in my mind of saying we're currently doing business with you and O'Reilly's, and we're going to be assessing these vendor agreements. So without saying anything more, I'm O'Reilly's. I receive this letter, and what do I do immediately? I go to this dealer's account and I look up, oh man, they did $70,000 in business with us this year.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can help them a little bit on pricing as they're assessing us against the competitors, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to, at least annually, I'm going to ask this vendor. So I'm choosing auto parts, but go down the list. Software, GPS maybe. I mean, it's like all these people that you can go to and say, we're assessing these agreements.
I would say too, that when you send out that letter, that it's like, we're assessing these agreements and we would like to meet with you on X date to talk about what we've found or something, so that you're setting up a meeting to be able to talk to them about what you found. And it may be a 10-minute meeting. It may be an hour meeting, but it's something. So we're going to touch base. Found. So like, for instance, you're looking at, we'll stay with O'Reilly or whatever. And you letting them know we're going to be doing this thing. And then you're sitting down with those department heads. Again, Jim's suggesting that this doesn't include the dealer. If you've got a general manager or something like that, you're sitting on the department heads and it's like, what do you like? What don't you like? Where, and after you've done the financial assessment, it's like going through, what would you like to see? What, are all of those kind of things. And so it's, as we were talking about that this morning, we're thinking about just like softwares, because O'Reilly and AutoZone. I know that there's like an online platform and you can order the stuff there and all of that. So, but it's probably pretty universal across the board about what it is, what features and things like you've got there. But when you're looking at a software, how many of us fully utilize every bit of what a software has to offer? Yeah. Very few of us do. And so we may, through this process, come up with, hey, we don't like this and we wish we had this, and here's the things that we love. And then imagine when you sit down with that software provider and say, okay, here's the things. There's a pretty decent chance that software provider will either offer more training or say, hey, we do have this thing, and so it looks like you're not utilizing it. And so let's figure out how to help you utilize it. And, so they're introducing you to new things, a new package, a new whatever that might fit your needs better. And, I think about cell phones. There's a lot of cell phone providers out there. And so when we will go in, and we're actually due, because I keep getting my bill and I'm like, why is our bill so high? But going in and saying, here's the things, these are the things, and talking with someone that can say, oh, you're on the wrong plan.
Sure.
For what you need. And so having that,
let's adjust
that
your
touch,
plan. So your payment will be lower for a couple of months, and then it'll go back up to where it was because you didn't read the fine print. No,
reading the fine print is an
that's me
important
being a
part.
smart
So,
aleck. But
okay.
I think so. Back to the financial piece, I would say we just look first at the financial elements. Like, think about what it can mean when I'm a controller and I send this same letter to all the people that we sublet. Body work, mechanics outsourced. I mean, any of that kind of stuff that we sublet. So I'm able to send to, Joe's garage, and Joe's going to do the same thing. He's going, oh man, these guys did $110,000 with me in the last 12 months. I really don't want to lose their business.
Yeah.
So Joe's going to respond with, after careful review of your account, we've decided to adjust your labor rate, or maybe they won't. And you're going to have to make a decision now. But think about let's pick the DMS. Everybody says, it's a pain to migrate, right, from one DMS to the other, which is absolutely true. And I can't remember who we had a conversation with recently. I think you were there when a dealer said to me, kind of a pain to migrate from one software to about 400 accounts. And I said, what's worse? To migrate at about 1,000 accounts. Yeah. So, you're growing. Like it'd be better to just bite the bullet and make the switch now if you're going to make a switch. So, because the longer you stay in, the more married you are and the less leverage in some ways. Now, the question is, does the DMS provider, and this is why I kind of want to take the dealer out of it, the dealer relationship, because I find with software, it's really interesting. Like the dealer often is the one at the conference who makes the buying decision, but it's the managers who work within the software
deal with the buying decision.
So it's an interesting disconnect that sometimes happens. Like, who's the decision maker here, and who if I'm a DMS provider, who am I trying to satisfy? The check writer or the people who use it every day?
Well, and that actually, it's especially if you've got an operation that does have a general manager, and you've got department heads that are over teams and those kind of things. Buying decisions. I would suggest that those buying decisions are passed through with a grain of salt with your department heads and your general manager before making, because what I find is that sometimes we get really excited because something seems really shiny. And so we pull the trigger. It's like, oh, this is new and this is great, and let's do the thing. Which, if it's something you don't already have in your arsenal, then, okay. But if it can go both ways. Like, if you're not happy for whatever reason with one provider, and so you go to a conference and it's like, yep, this is the one, we're going to switch over to this one. That can cause, it's the one that you're not happy with, unless it's something really egregious. That might have been able to be fixed just by having a conversation with the provider.
Maybe.
But
I'm trying to stay on the financial part.
Sorry, we're going back to financial. I apologize.
I really haven't ever finished with the financial. So if we think about just the financial assessment, and again, picking sublet, like it could be the repair shops that you're working with. So I can say to them, like, for example, if I'm the DMS, what I'm saying is, look, in the third quarter of this year, our team is going to be, I'm leading a process, and our team is assessing, all of our providers. Like, it's not just you as the DMS people. We're looking at our payment processor. We're looking at our mechanics. This is why it's a quarterly review kind of thing.
Anyone you have a contract with is what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. And so imagine what it looks like whenever I send this letter to my DMS provider and I say, I'm with you, DMS provider number one. We're going to be assessing our contract because we see that our renewal date is January 1st. Right. And so in the third quarter of this year, we're going to be assessing, and we've decided to also compare these vendor 1 or 2, 3, and 4. There's no harm in that. There's zero harm in that. You just include it in there and say, we're comparing you to these other solutions, right? And so just put them in a place where, and again, Michelle and I, we love these vendors. We're not trying to, cost them any money. But we work for dealers. Like, we're trying to make sure dealers get the best possible terms and rates and the best possible solution for them. So for us, this is about going to all the DMS providers. And by the way, when we do introductions to new dealers, we typically tell them we're introducing you, and we're also introducing, this dealer to, your solution number one. We're also introducing them to solution number 2. And we will say that in the emails. Why? Because it's important that they understand that, we're not just sending the dealer to you because we like you. Yes, we like you, but the dealer is going to have choices here about where they do business. And so just be aware of that as they come to you and you prepare a quote for them. Just know that we're encouraging them to look at least 2 or 3 providers. Right.
Yeah.
So same thing back to here is like, we're just going to compare financially speaking first. And then now we have to know what the financial baseline is. So Joe's mechanic shop comes back. We're going to adjust your rate from $100 an hour to $90 because of all the business you've been doing with us. And we can reassess again in 12 months. Fine. Now I look at that $90 and I look at, Bob's garage came back with 75. Yeah, but Bob's really slow, so so you're going to make that judgment as a team, but at least financially you get that response back.
Yeah.
To know kind of where you stand financially and what that looks like. But it's, what does it mean to a dealer's business if Joe's mechanic shop does most of their business and Joe drops their labor rate, even $10 an hour, $15, whatever. Think about what that means to your bottom line.
Yeah.
And so this is why we recommend you just have a process. And it could be a simple letter. It could be a simple email, and you're going to want to follow up with them and make sure you get a response from everybody, because if there's no action, you're just going to kind of tell them, we're going to make our announcements, in the fourth quarter about, how we're moving forward. But I think you just gotta, people got to compete.
And that is, that's like being really being tapped into what's for the best interest of my dealership. And it doesn't have to be about relationships. It's like, what is the best thing for my dealership? And when you talk about you've got a Bob's shop and Bill's shop down the street, the relationship can be a measuring factor, but it's like this is business. And so there's a difference between, that there's to understand that line between we're buddies and we're on the same bowling league and this is business.
Yeah.
And when you talk about shop squirrel, just for a second, one of the things that we advise our dealer clients to do is to try to not have a specific vendor that you have an agreement that all of your business is going to go to them, because then you can create a bottleneck really quickly. And they've got you might be getting a good deal, but now instead of getting 10 cars through the line every week, you're getting 5 cars through the line every week. And it's like, yeah, are you really saving money? Because when we that's a whole nother squirrel thing, because it's so interesting as every single dealer we've talked to recently, they're like, if I could get more cars through the line, I would sell more cars. So, that's a bottleneck.
Yeah, that's a topic for us to definitely bring back around, because, there are things to assess in there that I think I don't hear talked about enough in terms of how to, and we talked about this at some length with one of our V8 groups last month. And so I just know there's some opportunity there for dealers to better understand maybe how to make that decision about outsourcing versus using my own lifts. And then there's also the decision about, dealers have a certain number of lifts, and many of them are splitting the recon versus
and that's
the
one of the
customer
topics we have coming up in May.
Right. Yeah. So that's an important one to think about. But I think, for today, I think with this vendor agreement deal, it's just like, let's assess them all. And then in light of the things that we've seen, part of that assessment is just kind of line by line on the charges. Got to go through those statements and those invoices and look and see what are the line by line, what are we being charged for? And just make sure that when you send that, like if I have the controller, I would, my letter would basically say, I show that our agreement with you is set to end here. And I show that we're currently being charged this rate for, but if it's back to payment processors, I'm being charged this rate for merchant processing services. I'm being this much for whatever other fees and a monthly fee, whatever that looks like, and just lay it out there. This is what we show. If this is not accurate, or we're being charged for something we should be charged for, this is your opportunity to resolve that. Because
so like the whole process really is started with know your contracts. contracts. Read to it. And dealers, you should know your contracts, but so should your GM or your controller. Understand the contracts, because if they understand the contracts and they're the ones that have got the checkbook to pay all of the bills, that can be something that being caught really quickly. And if they're not aware of what the agreements are, they're just going to pay the bill.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're just paying the bill because that's my job. I just pay the bill. But having that gatekeeper and someone that is outside of the dealer, because the dealer, especially if you've got a controller, you've got a lot of other fish to fry, things that are taking up your time. So having someone on your team, the controller, or even having it be part of the department head, it's like, understand the contract, sign off on the bills, whatever that are happening every month. And that will help mitigate a lot of errors in your billing. Now, whether or not you're happy with your bill or you're happy with your service, that's the next question.
Sure. And I would just, and we can wrap up, but the one thing that comes to mind for me is, even if a contract is, I look at these contracts and we're 18 months out from our renewal date. So you might feel like you're stuck, but I would say still send that thing, still ask them to reassess, because I can imagine scenarios where, terminating contract now and having to pay another 18 months on a contract that I'm no longer using the service, that's painful. But if I can make up the money with this other provider, like I'm actually going to save enough with this other provider to cover that or make it worth the switch, then I may switch early, and I may be stuck in a contract for 18 months, and I may be able to go back and negotiate a settlement, pay it in cash, and get it done early. So, there's always ways to get there, but I would just say you got to assess all the agreements, even if they're active and not set to
and
retire.
Know that, this is something that we strongly believe in. Agreements are great. You need to have agreements. Agreements can be renegotiated
and replaced.
And so understanding that, if you're not happy with your agreement, then, but maybe you're happy with the software, maybe you're happy with the process, but you're not happy with how much you're having to pay or for little things or whatever, is doing that. We're going to assess and then opening the conversation. Hey, we got a problem with here. We've talked to this person and this person, and they can give it to us for this amount. Can you guys do that? We don't want to have to move if we don't, because obviously changing softwares, especially ones that have a CRM associated with it, or the entire something that's tracking something the entire length of a contract, that can be painful. But having the conversation, and it's just that whole idea of understanding the values that are out there, and what options are out there. It's a really, I love when Jim brought this up, is it's an annual thing, and it doesn't have to be super long and drawn out, because if you've already got your department heads or your controller aware of the contracts, then it can become a pretty simple, we're just going to spend the time during the third quarter, sometime whenever your dealership has the bandwidth to be able to do some of the housekeeping things, and putting that on your calendar so that it's happening every year. And then the dealer, your vendors will get used to this and will probably be a lot more proactive about, hey, we know we're coming up to the thing and the stuff, and we just wanted you to be aware of some new something or another. And you might end up through that process having, even just with your current vendors, a better experience because of it.
And it's part of my responsibility as a controller is to make sure that if you're my dealer, I got to make sure that, one, we're not overspending anywhere, that we're not paying for something that we're not utilizing or that we're not supposed to be charged for. And then to just offer comparison. But one thing too that I would add, like if I were preparing this letter, and look, if somebody needs help with this letter, reach out. I'm happy to help draft the preliminary letter. But basically what it's going to say is it'll have a firm deadline. It'll say, we've issued this, or, it's going to be dated, and it's going to say, if we haven't received a response by such and such date, make it very clear that we're going to move ahead as though there's no adjustment. There's no adjustment to the services or rates, and we'll be making our business decisions based on that.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't respond, we're assuming you're keeping our rate the same.
Yeah.
The contract's going to be unchanged, and we're going to be making our business decisions after that.
Committee
date.
meeting is happening here.
Yeah,
so
right.
if you want to be, then let us know.
Create some urgency around it.
And then have, if it's a decision to move, have the conversation again with your provider and saying, we are planning on moving because of this, and this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously we don't want to have to move. Can you meet these things?
Sure.
And then decide from there.
Yeah.
So
there's some other things that come to mind, but I think we have to save it for another day. So folks are busy on a Monday, and we just we're grateful again. Last Friday we marked the 300th episode. Just take a moment to say thank you for those of you who track the show regularly.
We really appreciate
a quick hello to Vic Everett out in California, who listens to us while walking and exercising in the morning. So good morning to Vic. And to those folks who just tune in regularly, we appreciate you making time. We're going to continue to show up and bring information to dealers, because that's what we're about.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and part of your week. And we really appreciate your support. Let us know if there's something that you see that you would really like us to kind of break down and talk about. We're always open to ideas for upcoming podcasts.
And we know a lot of smart people.
We know a lot of smart people.
So we can bring them here.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.